From the shadows of doubt to embracing the light. Welcome to the journey. Feel the beat in your soul. From caving in to crushing it. Join us, let's roll.
All right, welcome everybody to From Caving In to Crushing It, another episode. I'm Drew Duraney, your host, and we got an awesome guest today, Quinn Harwood. You're gonna love Quinn, not only because of his story, but because of the awesome human being he is. Let me tell you a little about him. And yes, I do need reading glasses now, but that's okay. Quinn, Coach Q Harwood, is a professional certified ICF coach and a speaker, and the author of GrowthTime, a Coaching Fable, the clear path to unlock your best life and leadership. Quinn's passionate about empowering the next gen of mission movers to make real impact. Drawing from a journey that includes professional basketball, more than 2 decades in corporate leadership, and thousands of coaching sessions, Coach Q helps emerging and established leaders break through barriers and lead with bold confidence. His mindset is rooted in faith, resilience, and the belief that growth happens when intention meets action. I'm really excited about this. Let's bring Quinn Harwood on, today's guest. There he is. I love that bio, man. I love you, man, too. You're an awesome guy. And it was funny, before we were recording, I remember when you and I were first speaking, and somehow it came up about us if we met in person. I'm 5'5", and you said you're 6'8" or 6'9", depending on the day. And I just thought that would be so cool to meet you in person. We could have the sequel of that movie Twins with Schwarzenegger and DeVito. Yes, I'm aging myself here, but thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Drew, I'm excited. I remember connecting it 2 months ago and just hearing your story and how you've gone from caving into crushing it. And I love what you're doing. I love the mission you're moving. Excited to be on your show and hopefully offer some good value to the people that are listening and give them some good tips, some good thoughts, and a good story on how to go from caving in as the catalyst to crushing it, baby.
Absolutely. And you will, man, because your story is unbelievable. So I always like to thank the person who introduced me to my guest. So Ben Albert, if you're out there listening, my friend, Ben, thank you so much for introducing me to Quinn. I really appreciate it, pal. If you didn't introduce us, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you. Thank you. My audience knows that I always begin with how I talk about how when we're young, when we're kids, and we're influenced by our family, our friends, and everybody around us, that we're taught that life is linear. We're told that life is a straight line. If we do A plus B plus C, D is going to happen. And you know what? For the most part, life is linear until it's not. Ultimately, adversity rears its ugly head, and that external circumstance comes out and gets in the way of one of those letters, and now we don't have a straight path anymore in life. We got a more circuitous route. And I truly believe that there's 3 types of people out there. In this case, there's 3 types of men. You have man number 1, who's got a ton of blind spots. He doesn't see the adversity when it hits, and he just keeps continuing to go on life the way he was taught, and nothing changes. And then you have man number 2. Man number 2 does see the adversity. He's got a little more self-awareness, yet he says that adversity is a barrier. It's not an opportunity. Life's doing that to him, not for him, and he can't change it. It is what it is. And you know what? He doesn't change. And on his deathbed, he's got a ton of regrets. Yet there's man number 3 out there. That's Quinn Harwood. Man number 3 is the man who does see that adversity and says, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. This adversity is not a barrier. It's an opportunity to do something different in life, turn it around, and become a stronger man. So with that long-winded monologue, my friend Quinn, if you could reach back as far as you need for that defining moment, whether it was the tap on the shoulder, the whisper in the ear, or like I needed 2x4 upside my head, that kind of transformed you and impacted your life. And when you moved from being man number 1 or 2 to the man you are today, we'd love to hear your story, my friend.
Yeah, Drew, I appreciate it. And I would say the linear path is the great lie. I think the linear path thinks we're fully in control of the direction we're heading.
Yeah.
And I think that's a common fallacy. But it takes time when you're growing up and living your goals or your dreams and you think that it is linear. It takes a life quake or two, as I call it. And I've probably had a good life quake in each decade of my life that's kind of given me opportunity. But I think the story, what you're asking for and want to share, is my big aha moment, or my big moment of coming from a caving or crushing a soul, a mindset when I was out, was basically in my early 20s. And I just graduated from Davidson College, played college basketball, did real well, was an academic regional All-American, thought I'd get drafted. I didn't get drafted in the NBA, but I still had the goal of trying to make it there. And I was, from many realms, you would say he's got a lot going for him. Great education. I'm a decent looking dude, you could say, maybe on some days. And then on the journey, I was really finding myself with a big, strong mask. I wrestled internally so much with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and really unbelief, a deep-rooted belief in me. And what would happen is I had a great mask that would cover that up. And so I could almost come across as this arrogant athlete. And so it was a big blind spot, a big unsettledness in me. And where life changed or transitioned for me and went from linear to a shaking was when I was playing basketball in the now defunct CBA. It's the precursor to the G League back years ago. And I was just at a deep, dark space in my life. And I was wrestling with myself, some past family demons that were biting me in the butt, and wrestling with where I was going, who I was, and what I wanted to become, and figuring as a man, I need to figure it all out and bootstrap it up and just keep driving through to find success on that linear path. And, in that, I got confronted. I got confronted with some hard questions. And I think challenging hard questions can be a shaker. So I got a hard question asked to me, Drew.
And what was that question? It
was interesting because the question was more of a faith-based question. Okay. It was from a roommate who actually was a roommate of mine in the CBA, and we traveled together. And he was a faith-based person. I really wasn't. It wasn't something that was a big part of my life story. Right. But he asked me a question that really set me seeking for something, and it challenged me. He asked me a question that was really profound. He said, hey, where are you in your life with Jesus? And I said, I don't know. I got enough issues, enough challenges. I'll figure that when I get older. And what it did, though, it left me in the spot of realizing I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I opened my eyes to say, I don't really know what I believe. I don't know what I believe about myself. I don't know what I believe about my future. I don't know what I believe about this faith thing. I just had so many confrontation right there where I wasn't sure what I really believed about anything. And that right there was the catalyst to go stop being in your self-pity, stop being in your sorrow, stop self-sabotaging, stop chasing and fighting your demons, and get into a personal growth journey. Wow. And that's where I would say my personal growth time in life began. And I went from linear and being crushed, being caved in, let's just say, to say, oh, I need personal growth in my life in a lot of areas. And I embraced that. And that's when I started to change and shift and started to really attack life and started to crush it in that part.
Oh, a question, thank you for sharing that. A question like that usually doesn't come out of nowhere. So when your roommate asked you that question, had you been seeking advice, or did he see a change in behavior, or was he somebody who just would ask that question to anybody, or did he just pick you because something was going on?
I think probably all the above, really, Drew. I think there was a part where he recognized that I was wrestling with life, and he had some stories himself that were pretty eye-opening. He was a person who was born and raised and grew up in Compton, in a tough area neighborhood, but he lived a different life. He wasn't caved in. He was crushing it. And so he had a lot of things to share, and he would share a little bit about his faith story and what it meant to him. And so it was birthed out of a little bit of seeing my pain, and it was probably birthed out a little bit of him just being curious about where I was at in my life and just asking open questions to me, which didn't really have a lot of people doing that in my life.
Well, I'm sure you had some gratitude for that question, because when you did decide to do a deep dive in personal development, I believe you have to be both willing and able at the same time to do it. And a lot of times in life we're willing to do it and we're not able, or we're not willing, even though we have the capability of doing it. So I think you were ready for that. Now, what really surprises me, and maybe shouldn't because it's happened to me too, but when you had talked about, you are a smart guy, good looking guy, had the basketball skill, went to college, academic All-American, all of this stuff. Where does the imposter syndrome come for somebody like you?
It's rooted in your belief system growing up. And
Right.
So the father figure was so central. And I know many people on this call or listening can identify with sometimes the broken father figure relationship.
Right,
And
right.
that was my story. A lot of hard-nosed, hard-hitting father story. Work ethic strong, but very tough, strong discipline. But there wasn't a lot of confidence or affirmation or encouragement building. It was always, you need to perform better, you need to do better, you need to figure it out. And so I think where my own lack of insecurities came from was just not having a very affirming figure or someone who would just look at you and you say, I believe in you. I believe you can conquer this. I believe you can make an impact. I didn't necessarily get that messaging growing up. So you tend to wrestle with yourself. Who are you? What's your identity? What do you really believe? How do you overcome obstacles without taking shortcuts? So I think that was pretty pivotal pain points growing up.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. And there is a commonality often with lack of a male mentor for a young boy, where it does lead to some of the imposter syndrome and the feeling of inadequacy and lack of confidence. Throughout your life, had you seen others with a mentor and said, I want one of them? Or did you not know what a mentor was? Or tell me about the people you hung around with. Did they have mentors, and did you seek one? And did any of your coaches ever become one for you?
I don't know that I had a specific mentor. I had people that came into my life who did sow some confidence, they did sow some belief in me. So I think that's part of all of our life stories. They come in maybe for a season or for a quick reason in your life. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they move on. So I can recall definitely people that were kind of like highlights, kind of bright spots. My high school coach, my junior varsity coach was one of them. He was Irv Green. He actually sowed a lot of confidence and belief in me. I was a 5'11" kid who couldn't jump over an iPhone. Not that they had him back then, but I couldn't jump over it either way. And he really saw me as a player who played point guard on a basketball team that was full of athletes. And he just instilled confidence in me to do that. And he actually would encourage me and say, you're the best person for the job. I believe in you. And that was really transformational and built my confidence to a degree, that someone could actually give me a shot and someone could think that you could go do it.
That's awesome. That's great that you had somebody like that, because it does take at least one person to sow the seed of belief. And so that was your junior varsity and high school coach. When you graduated college with the hopes of being drafted by the NBA and you were not drafted, what did that do to your imposter syndrome and confidence?
It only elevated it, Drew. I can remember when I got out of college, I had a tryout with the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'm out there in LA playing in their summer league. There's this 18-year-old kid full of brim and confidence and cockiness. I'm challenging to shooting competitions, but he's walking with a whole nother level of confidence. And that dude was Kobe Bryant, right? So we had some fun, shooting and playing each other. But I recognized he and others at that level had a different level of confidence I just didn't possess. And I couldn't fake it till I made it. It was just something I lacked internally.
Wow. Yeah, I guess when you were at your top of your game in college, and it's almost like being a freshman again when you're going to the summer league, with the Lakers. You did get into the CBA, which at that time it's called the G League right now.
Correct.
Yeah. So the CBA, and I had heard of the CBA, and so when you at least got a chance to play there, and that's where you met the roommate who asked you that poignant question. Did your confidence start to grow until that crucial moment when that question was asked to you? or were you still struggling like that?
I was struggling, man. Drew, I was at the end of the bench, doubting myself, doubting life,
Yeah.
sometimes sitting at home playing PlayStation, sipping on, rum and Coke, man. It was just
Okay.
it was a
Okay.
tough
All
spot.
right. All right. All right. So I got the picture here, and I'm sure the audience does too. Roommate throws that question, and you catch that question about what your relationship with Jesus is. What did you do after that when you decided to soul search and deep dive? How did you specifically go about it? How did you start? People like, starting is the hardest part.
The starting part of finding belief is getting a clear slate. We grow up linear in our mindset where we attach onto certain beliefs and belief systems that we just hold as true because they're ingrained in us. So in order to shift, even if as an adult, and this is what I coach you quite frequently, you almost have to lay down that you don't know the answer to anything, that you really don't have a clarity upon anything, and you have to approach it with an open, exploratory, curious mindset to find out what is going to be the truth you're going to hold to and the truth you're going to embrace. So in that journey, I got very open and transparent that, hey, I didn't know what I believed about me. I didn't know where I found my identity. And I definitely didn't know what faith or relationship with God for me would look like or how it could look like. So taking those steps to get clarity in those areas became very transformational for me, in my early 20s. And it's something I really write about in the book I released that you mentioned, GrowthTime. I write about it. It's called The Power of You, and how you get clarity, the power of you, and the purpose kind of plan for your life, and how you get clear on your identity and identity anchors so that you can walk with a whole different level of bold confidence. And my transition story, where I started to go from, and I love your moniker, from being caved into crushing it, was when I started to get clarity on the power of me and what that really entailed and looked like. And it required self-improvement, and it required what I call God improvement. But when those merged together and I started to find what I call identity anchors in my life, I wasn't no longer moved and swayed by my performance. So I was very performance driven, and a lot of people that are listening, they're in the corporate world, they're in entrepreneurial space. We get so performance driven that our well-being and our mindset is based upon how we are perceived, we are doing and performing in our goal or task or career. It's a big trap. It's a big lie. But in that, overcoming that with these identity anchors that, I coached you in The Power of You became transformational. Transformation happens from the inside out, not from the outside in. Absolutely. And so that transformational story that began in my life with personal growth, with faith, began to revolutionize how I saw myself, saw the world, and I began to start attacking it. And it's really pretty amazing because when you talk about transitions in life, I went from the end of the bench in the minor leagues, and then through a journey of about 8 months, I signed a contract to play with the Los Angeles Clippers. And my performance and confidence just shot through the roof during that period.
Wow. All right. So there's a lot here. And the way the brain works is we learn from experience, right? And so if things didn't go bad, it don't go well, we think of that when we're going to maybe try something else, something new, because that's the anchor we have, is the memory or the perception of what happened to us in the past. And that's a stronghold. So how do you create that clear slate and admit to yourself, I don't know, even though A, B, and C crap happened to me or happened in the past, that does not define me. And how do you transition from believing that it all comes from within rather than that external circumstance dictating you?
Yeah, it's what I would call, Drew, we're identifying growth gaps. Okay. So a lot of times in our life story, or we think it's a linear journey, and to your space, life interruptions, life quakes, adversity, challenge hits, and our character within our own story, which we become the hero of, is challenged.
Got it.
And we can personalize it, our failure, our disappointments, we can become victim mentality. And it's happening at us, not to us. And it's definitely, we don't view life happening for us. But once we come to the conclusion that it's not inherently like bad or me, or I get a fixed mindset, once we come to say, wait a second, oh, you know what? There's a growth gap here. And if I can understand where the growth gap is and get clarity on my growth gap, guess what? there's a possibility of a different me emerging, a better me, a better life, a better perspective.
Right.
So those growth gaps, and that's where I went into that growth gap in my early 20s, became like foundational. And that's where I kind of coached to the power of you. It's just that's a growth gap. And I experienced at a young age. I see people that I coach and speak to now that are in the 30s and 40s that are still struggling with that. They haven't got clarity on what that growth gap is and how to overcome it. So there still has this internal wrestle with themselves. So it's quite common in that coaching world to see that.
Yeah. The growth gap. I love that terminology. And I completely understand where you're coming from with that, because if you have any self-doubt, the doubt comes from past experiences, and there's your growth gap right there. How do we fill that growth gap with appropriate, because we can always ask ourselves, is what we think about ourselves the truth? And more often than not, it's not the truth. And we got to fill that gap with something. What I did, and I guess maybe I applied the transformational anchors. Do they call them transformational anchors? I forgave. What do you call them in your book?
I call them identity anchors.
Identity anchors.
That allow transformation to take place. Yeah.
Let's go with that. Let's go. My identity anchor I used was forgiveness. Forgiving myself because I didn't have the tools at the time that I have now to make different decisions. And then forgiveness of others, they don't know what they do. And once you're able to forgive yourself and forgive others, it gives you the ability to start to slowly close that growth gap. And so I guess for me, I can say I used forgiveness as an identity anchor, and still am using it because I'm still finding growth gaps, man, in every decision I have to make right now. And so I appreciate that. And I'm going to start applying your terminology. And if you don't mind me sharing that with others, Coach Q's growth gaps and identity anchors. I love that.
I love it, for sure. Full share. And I feel your heart with that, because in that, and, I coached quite a bit to that. One of the growth gaps that I experienced later on when life was no longer linear and basketball was stripped away and I went through a failed business partnership, I learned about personal liberty, and I learned about the power of personal freedom to be the best God authentic version of you, and how that can therefore help you show up in life. And one of the core principles behind that is rooted in forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. And so clearly identifiable. And I love that, because it is a powerful truth we can't run from if we want to really live our best life and make the impact that a lot of us hope to make that are even listening on this call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm not going to gloss over the contract with the Los Angeles Clippers. How'd that go? And what happened?
Yeah, Drew, life was linear for a minute and then crash came. And so part of the story of getting to a near pinnacle is I blew up my ankle playing for the Clippers.
Boy.
Boom, busted it, came down. I probably should have just broke it. It'd been easier. Rehabbed it probably too quick. Came back and tried to enter into the minor league again in the CBA. Tore up a couple quad tendons. And it was just it was an unfortunate cycle of maybe 3 or 4 injuries that really just kind of sucked out the basketball career over the course of about 3 years.
Okay. Well, sorry that happened, yet you are the strong man you are, I believe, because of that happening. So I'm sure you identified some more growth gaps after that happened, and then found some more identity anchors. So let's get to the business you started. What happened after you realized basketball was not going to be your profession? What did you decide to go into after that?
Yeah, I took a flyer with it, really, Drew. At the time, I was married and had a firstborn kid, and was still thinking that basketball was going to be a pathway, and the doors kept closing. And I just got into doing sales. I got into the fitness industry. I love the idea of helping people reach their potential and performance, and fitness is a powerful way to do it. Still a fitness holic to the day. And in that, I got into the sales part of it. And I had a really powerful career in sales, became like the top salesperson in the company. And what that becomes opportunity. And then I became a sales manager. After that, I went and became a an area supervisor manager. And other than a short stint where I went through a failed entrepreneur journey, I spent about 17 years in the corporate culture in the fitness industry. Finished as a mid-senior level manager, and absolutely loved at that point, fell in love with leadership. When you get into leadership, which I know you've got a lot of people that are professionals and leaders on this call, what you find is there's growth gaps in leadership, and identifying with those growth gaps to drive results and drive performance and how that works. Well, that became a framework for what I even wrote about and what I even coached to. And so there was definitely non-linear approach to my leadership journey and my performance results. And as I grew through those growth gaps and identified them, well, you get more success. And so that became the pathway for me for years. And I fell in love with the leadership, pathway. And then that COVID, right? We can get to that at some point, but COVID became this great casualty. And that was another non-linear path after almost a 2-decade career in the professional world.
Wow. Well, we all know that nasty 5-letter word. Because we all have a story about COVID and what happened when the lockdown hit. So lockdown hits and things change for you. What growth gap do you remember finding there, and what identity anchor did you use?
What was interesting about COVID, to be really transparent, with it, Drew, it was a casualty on a number of fronts. It was almost like a perfect storm. Unfortunately, which is painful, which a lot of us have gone through, is I was in a 20-year marriage with 3 kids, and right before COVID hit, it was an unexpected crash. And the divorce happened. It was broken. It was grief. It was sorrow. And so it was just this painful, soul-sucking journey. And in that, COVID hits. I get put on furlough because the industry and the culture shuts down. Right. Get a phone call, and the 17-year career gone. They eliminated my job. They actually went through a process of bankruptcy. So the market I ran for them, other than a store or two, was completely, closed out. So really what I found during that period, as much as there was pain and sorrow and grief, there was mixed in this level of hope and joy because something beautiful was coming out of it. It was like a redirect. It was a redirect in my life. And I really leaned on all the growth story gaps I had gone through over the past 20 years, which are marked out in the book GrowthTime. And I found the power and the love of coaching. I worked with a coach. I work with the great growth coach. That's kind of my fun name for Coach God. And I got a clear vision of what next should happen. And one identity anchor I leaned to quite a bit was my mission statement. It can't go understated how valuable it is for someone to put in growth work to get a clear mission statement, like a clear motivator why you do what you do. It can't be just like my family, or it just can't be like, oh, because I want to make a good living. At the core of you is a really clean, strong, word powerful mission statement. And for me, I'd done that growth work 20 years earlier, and it was to grow and develop leaders' lives through impactful coaching, training, and education. So with that clear mission statement, which is an identity anchor, I could wake up in the morning and say, where's the pathway to use my mission to grow and develop leaders' lives through impactful coaching, training, and education? And what was birthed out of that was getting into the coaching platform, getting into the speaking platform, getting into author, speaker, coach, trainer mode. And it just became beautiful. I got a vision for the GrowthTime pathway. I like to say, what time is it? It's always GrowthTime, baby. And just began to get into growth. It's been my passion for 20 something years since that my GrowthTime began when I was 22. And I said, gosh, it's just reshifting. And then I got into the entrepreneurial space again. And it's been powerful, unbelievably impactful to people. When I coach, I see people's lives transformed. I see their careers accelerate. I see them match up their mission with their money. I see stress reduced. I see all these powerful things that are happening through the power of coaching and speaking. And it just fires me up. It's so impactful to see it.
I love it. And somehow I think the answer to the question that your roommate, when you were in the CBA, asked, I think has a lot to do with where you are now. So if he were here now, your roommate, and asked you that question about Jesus, what would your answer be now?
Well, what I found and what I experienced is true is I made a decision when I was 22, and it was the best decision I've ever made. After going through getting clarity on what truth was, I came to the conclusion of who Jesus really was to me, and I put my faith in Christ, and that completely changed my journey almost 30 years ago. And I pursued that relationship with unabandoned love and passion. I feel like it's the one thing I can control in life. If life's not linear and there's gaps, what can I really truly control? There's one thing I believe I can, and that's how good I want my relationship with my Creator to be. And that Jesus was a catalyst to connect me to God. And I think that has been the most powerful confidence builder, strength, empowerment. The voice of growth speaks through that to me in my life. And it's been an absolutely godsend. I'm so grateful for it.
I love that. I love this. And I'm a how guy. How does that happen? Now, I know, I'm a religious person too. I believe in Jesus, believe in God. And there you have organized religion, and you have, the four walls and people are running a church and all this kind of stuff. And there's human issues when that happens. Or you could also say that God is everywhere, so you don't necessarily have to go to the four walls church. Where are you on that? How did you find that connection with Jesus? How did you find it?
Yeah. I think the personal part is where you start. Okay. It's kind of like I use the fitness analogy. You could go to a gym, but that doesn't make you a fitness person. It just means you go to a gym.
Good. I love it. Okay.
Yeah. Just because you go to a church or a religious setting doesn't mean it's really real in your life. And so the real part comes from the experience you have with God, with your Creator. And that became really real to me. And just to be open with your audience, because maybe this will really speak to somebody at a higher level than anything, is you mentioned about forgiveness.
Yeah.
One of the greatest transitions happened in my life story when I went and had a conversation with my dad. And as a person who stuffed and ignored feelings, emotions, and thoughts growing up, I went to my dad at 22 and I told him I forgave him. And I told him what I was so upset about. I told him I loved him, and I told him I wanted a relationship with him that was real. After that conversation with my dad, I can remember driving back. I was in Myrtle Beach, and I was driving back up to Virginia where I lived. I had an experience with God that changed me. It was like this sense of love and peace and joy just completely came over me. And all of a sudden, like burdens and fears and doubts, they just seemed to dissipate and they were just gone. And so I matched up what I knew. I was a biology major, so I had to get really facts and truth, but I matched that up with experience. Right. And you can't shake a person's experience. We can argue facts all day, but when I say here's an experience that changed me, whether that's faith-based, whether that's an experience you have in life, whether it's experience you have in a relationship or a business, whether you're an successful entrepreneur, that experience shapes you, and you can't deny what you've experienced in that setting.
Very true.
In the faith setting, I couldn't deny what had happened, nor did I want to, because it was transformational.
Wow. And I believe, I believe, and I'm sure you do too, that it was God driven that you had that conversation with your father.
100%.
100%.
It was humbling, and I think the journey we all walk through as people, men, women, is dealing with the greatest virus. You talk about COVID being a bad five-letter word. I mean, the biggest virus we have as people that hinders our growth time or addressing growth gaps is what I call the pride ego virus. The pride ego virus is inherent to us all, and that is a layer to prevent growth, just to stay stagnant, to stay stuck, whatever place, whether it's spiritual, physical, career, relationship. It is the barrier we all have to deal with.
Right. And, and I agree with you 100%. And that barrier a lot of times comes from a certain part of our brain the subconscious, that the amygdala that keeps us, it protects us, right? It was the fight or flight. It protects us from harm, and sometimes it does more harm than good for us. So we've got to be conscious that we can change that in our brain and say, no, you're not in charge anymore. Thanks for helping me while I was younger, but there's a new sheriff in town. I love it. This is awesome. You know what? I know the audience has captured the essence of Quinn Harwood. And, usually before we record, I always like to promote my guest, and I forgot to ask you how you want people to get in touch with you. So I'm going to have to ask you to answer that question. People are going to want to get in touch with you. What is the best way, Quinn?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn. I know a lot of your audience are professional people. Go on LinkedIn, find my profile, connect with me, and just send me a message. Say, hey, I connected with you. I heard you on the Caregiver Mentor. I've heard you on the podcast. I heard you with Drew. And if you have anything that you're feeling stuck or stagnant with it, whether it's life related, leadership related, I do a high volume of business coaching, anything that you're feeling stuck with, just DM me what it is, and I respond to them all.
Beautiful, beautiful. So on LinkedIn, folks. So about the book, tell us more about as much more about the book that you would like to guide the audience. So we've got growth gaps, identity anchors, a bunch of other beautiful stuff. Give us more on the book, and then let us know what other projects you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. The book got released, just a little about a year ago. It was a 4-year in the making process. When I got into the coaching space during COVID, it was basically a journey of taking the growth journey I had been on and creating it into a fable. So it just sits there in the back if you're watching video here. And what it's based upon is how to get a clear path. We're all on this personal growth journey. And the more we embrace it, we need to climb this mountain of personal growth so that we can move the mountains we were called and created to move in life. And on that rise up the mountain, there's a clear path. And it's basically taking us through the 3 growth zones of life and the 3 fundamental growth zones of leadership. And in there, this character called Peter is navigating from a struggling professional athlete through his corporate world and finding his strength and identity and leadership ability to drive results. So it's this kind of transformational journey. Within the book, I think it's pretty cool. I get a lot of great feedback on it. It's basically this character getting stuck and then having to go to these different villages to learn the growth lessons that he needs to learn to continue to advance his life. And there's a character in there called Coach G. There's an academy of performance that's involved in the GrowthTime journey, but it's basically taking you through a story form of how to grow in life and leadership. And the passion for that is that it's not just another life and leadership book and Quinn's thoughts on it. It's really, to me, giving you a parable in essence on how you can actually become successful, get clarity on where your growth gaps are. And then within the book there's actually clear resources on the growth steps you need to take. So it's also like a resource. It's just not like a story. There's actual practical places to pause and say, hey, here's how you get into your growth. Here's how you level up.
I love it. I love books like that, though. It's going to be a read where people are going to be following the characters, and they're going to start to resonate with at least one of the characters in it. And then they get to do some homework on themselves and a little deep dive in personal development. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Any big projects on the horizon, Quinn?
That's the major project I'm getting out and releasing. Like on the website, there's a couple pathways to support people's growth time. There's a newsletter course that deep dives you through growth time. The book is a catalyst as far as getting people out and getting awareness of what the growth time journey looks like. My big heart now is getting the message out. One of my biggest heart passions, Drew, is the next generation. And so the people, I call them Zillennials. They're that people like on the edge of being a Gen Z millennial. Yeah. I know the story they've walked through. I've walked through it. And there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of frustration, fear, doubt, uncertainty. And if they could have a coach to help mentor them through, and the books actually acts as a coach to mentor them through their personal growth and professional growth journey, that touches my heart. If I can impact that generation and leave this world a little better and change the world that I'm able to influence, I'm just trying to get the message out. And I'm just even honored that you'd have me on your show to even be able to mention it, because hopefully maybe there's 1 or 2 people that go, oh, I'm connecting with Coach Q's voice. I'm connecting with what he's sharing. And yeah, I'm willing to step out. I'm willing to step out into my growth time and start another chapter and go from being caved in to crushing it in life.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal of the show, to get, if there's one person out there who needs to hear your story, they now heard it or will hear it, and they'll reach out to you. Very important. Geez, I could talk to you forever. Got 2 final questions. You ready? Okay. This question, I love this question. So Quinn, you're sitting next to 7 to 10-year-old Quinn Harwood, your younger self, and you want to give him advice about life. What would you tell him?
Believe in yourself. Believe it's something bigger. Believe there's a plan for your life that's bigger. Choose to believe. Choose to believe. Your choice. You believe.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Switch gears. You're now sitting down with young businessman, young entrepreneur Quinn Harwood. You want to give him advice about business. What are you going to tell him?
Yeah. Have a plan. Have goals. Create disciplined habits. Keep navigating your plan, and know that even though the plans aren't going to work out, you can have a lot of ideas. You just keep taking steps. You keep taking steps of faith. You keep taking steps of action. You create goals and you keep moving towards them.
Love it. Wonderful advice. And somebody out there is going to listen, and they need to listen because they needed to hear your story. Quinn, I want to thank you for A, being on the show, B, being the human being you are. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing some wonderful things. You could have kept all of this to yourself and not shared. And you could have stopped, decided to just help yourself and not help others. You're helping others every single day. And I want to thank you for being who you are.
Man, I appreciate you, Drew. I love being connected to you, bro. Great stuff.
Absolutely, my friend. Everybody out there, listen, you may feel like you're caving in. Always know that there are choices out there. You can do this. You can choose to crush it over caving in. You can do this. Just reach out. You don't have to do it alone. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Take care and be well.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live? Or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.